Hello, everyone. I hope you are doing well today. In this video, I wanted to talk about what type of game Star Citizen is and how, in particular, it isn't really a main character game. Now, before we get started, if you like what I'm doing here, feel free to subscribe. I also have memberships open if you want to go that extra mile, and you're more than welcome to join the community Discord in the link below. Besides that, let's talk about some Star Citizen. Now, first things first, I apologize if I sound a little under the weather. The allergies are getting to me a little bit right now, so I apologize for that. But moving on, what do I mean when I say Star Citizen is not a main character game? Well, what I mean is that Star Citizen as a game doesn't revolve around the player as much as other games. In a way, we are the main characters of our own stories within the game, but not the main character of the game itself. And whilst there will be some individual narrative items for players, which we'll talk about in a little bit, the overall focus of Star Citizen is building your own story in a world that is actively lived in and changing all around you. I think the most important thing to remember is that even though one player might have their own individual goals, there could be another player or group of players out there that have goals that can conflict or add to yours. This is possible given the sandbox nature and freedom to make many choices. Now, in the game's current state, there aren't enough consequences or rewards for certain choices. We know this pretty obviously based off of the random PvP that happens in very lawful places. But this game is building towards a future where your choices will be much more valuable and important than they are now. By giving the player more choices over their own gameplay, they get to build their own story whilst also affecting the world around them. The way I look at it, playing Star Citizen has always been about participating in things that are a little bit bigger than myself, while still offering me personal incentives and progression. And that really is one of the most immersive aspects of it. Whether that be an engineer on a cargo ship or the lone surviving pilot in a massive fleet battle, the things you decide to do have even more purpose outside of the personal reward. And that really is a cool part. You can have tons and tons of personal and group gameplay whilst also progressing towards something no matter what. That could simply be you trying to slowly earning rep towards a cool blueprint, or working to upgrade your org's base or your own personal base. There's going to be 1,000 different ways of playing Star Citizen, and it's up to the player to create your own story. Now, speaking of stories, even though Star Citizen plans on catering to you building your own story, the game will have plenty of content specifically built for the individual player. One of these being a dedicated main story. This story will introduce players to different playstyles and gameplay, offering you a bit of assistance to get off the ground. This will also be followed by small location based stories. These will also provide some assistance to understanding the lore of the area you're in, as well as simply offering some small amounts of curated gameplay. Now, when I first heard about Star Citizen's idea around a main story, I was absolutely a little bit worried. Star Citizen's universe as a whole is so incredibly nonlinear, and it's very difficult currently to create any sort of linear content without it being interrupted by, obviously emergent gameplay or just some Star Citizen thing happening, which is why Star Citizen is exciting and we love that aspect of the current game itself. But if you're trying to make a linear story that most likely won't want to be interrupted, how are you going to do that within a world where that is kind of the nature of the game? Now, we don't necessarily know exactly how they're going to do it. They'll probably use things like instance content, putting you in areas of the actual game world that players either can't access or they just simply won't be at, and or maybe just like a rule set saying, missions will cancel or reset if something happens to them. But once you get past like the worries of how they're going to actually do this and how it will make sense within the world, the idea in itself is actually pretty solid. Right now, one of the biggest issues that all players kind of face in this game is the lack of information around certain ideas. What you can actually do in the game, how you can do it, the systems, the features, just a bunch of information that is missing that would really benefit the player and provide them with a little bit more direction, even in the current game state. And towards 1.0, this is going to be especially important. Now, of course, we can already plan that towards 1.0, there's going to be more content and information provided to us. The new social tools that they showed off, that's going to be a big one for allowing players to actually talk to each other and create groups and whatnot. But it's going to be really important that this main story offers the player a sense of direction once they get out of it, saying, like, hey, Once you finish the story, you're going to be confident that you know what you can do in the game, and then it's up to you. Like you're off the hook. It's your world now. Live in it. Do your thing. Make your own story. And I think that's a really cool idea. Like, hey, we'll kind of put you on some like soft rails with this main story, and then after that, like go for it. The world is yours. Now, one thing that I did talk about it just a second ago that I do know that there's a few different opinions on is instance gameplay. This will most likely come in a few different formats. We already know that there's going to be instance fleet battles, and there's going to be instance underground PvE gameplay, such as the municipal works under ArcCorp, and most likely some more down the line. Now, even though this gameplay is technically separate from the world, and what I mean is that it's basically within your own little server, I guess, or a part of the server where you're not really interactable with other human beings, but you're still within the game world. It's a very interesting thing that they already do with the hangars. We just don't see it happen. The hangar doors close, and then we are basically transported to an area that is completely ours. There's just no way for anyone else to get in. Now, even though this is, separate from the world and doesn't allow for really emergent gameplay, I do think they're implementing it in a decently smart way, making it where it's a little bit more isolated from other players. Now, this kind of brings us to the debate between actually my topic of the video and what some people think, there should be separated PvE completely so that they can actually enjoy their stuff. And I still stand very firmly that Star Citizen is not a main character game. As a matter of fact, I think that 90% of the content should be you as just like another citizen in the verse, partaking in whatever you want to do. But I also think having, a small portion of the content in this game being instance and a little bit more directed for you as a player is a little bit healthy. It's a healthy part of the game. And my initial thought around this is when I first heard about instant sleep battles, as a matter of fact. When I saw that, I was like, hey, that's really cool. I like that idea, but I want to do fleet battles with other players, with other orgs. But as I, got through the presentation, I understood that there are ideas around PvP, and it was very clear to me if I wanted to partake in those, I would join an org or create my own org that is designated to fleet battles, having these combat oriented experiences and just knowing that I will have them at some point when we are ready and we built our fleet out enough. And whenever we, finally all are online and we do this massive fleet battle, it's going to be super cool. It's going to be a very Star Citizen only, like that is only possible in Star Citizen. And then there's going to be the 5 friends that have this game that I love playing with, but I can never seemingly get them online at the same time. It's always a pain in the ass trying to set things up because, everyone's unprepared or whatever. And don't get me wrong, I have these friends in real life, and if they watch this, they'll know who they are. That we hop in, they don't have armor, they don't have their ship. It's like it's all kind of scattered. And I think instance content will be solid for experiences like that, where it's like, hey, we can take our time, get things ready, and when we're ready, we'll hop into this content, experience it, and then we will come back to the game world, and we'll be a part of everything else again. Now, I still feel very firmly about the fact that this is not a main character game, but I do understand that there are benefits to that instance content, and some of that being what I just said. And for players that just aren't fortunate enough to have the time to actually hop on whenever these things are occurring. And then by itself, I think some of this content could have different rewards and content that all players want to be a part of, which allows, everyone to kind of participate in instance content. It's not just like an outing for like the players that just don't want to play with anyone else. I think I personally think that if you don't want to play with anyone else and you want to play Star Citizen, you might be in the wrong place. And I will never say you cannot play the game. I will never say don't play the game. But I will say is that if that's the content you are looking for where it's completely isolated, completely solo, Star Citizen is probably not that game for you. You can still absolutely do it. You just will have to expect the possibility of certain things happening that you might not have anticipated in the first place. Now, that kind of brings us to the conclusion of this video. I want to note one thing before we go is that when I talk about these things, I'm not really talking about the current game we have as much as I am talking about the 1.0 vision of the game. The current game we have lacks a lot of different systems and features that make this experience a lot more solid. But you can still get a little taste of it with what we have, and there is that emergent aspect to it. There is that dynamic aspect. There's just a lot less purpose and progression towards anything at the current state of the game. But when you look past that, when we consider Star Citizen's 1.0 vision, I think it is important to consider that this, at the end of the day, won't be a main character game. The game will offer us main character elements through the story and other more isolated content like the instant stuff, but Star Citizen offers you the ability to make your own story through the content and missions it provides, but also lets your story interconnect with thousands of other players in many different ways. Emergent gameplay is part of the identity of Star Citizen. I understand that some players wish to stay more separated from other players, and though I understand why that might be, I also don't think Star Citizen would be the best host for that. I by no means want to tell anyone to stay away from this game or that they shouldn't play it. As a matter of fact, I think it's one of those games that if you're even remotely interested in the idea, you should absolutely give it a shot because it's just a very unique experience. Of course, like I said before, the current state of the game, it's very unique, but it's very messy at the moment. But when we look at 1.0, I think we really have the potential to have a game that offers so much to players that they can, hop on every day and experience something that they hadn't experienced the day prior, or something that is just super cool and unique to a game like Star Citizen. Now, that is going to wrap it up for this video. I wanted to kind of just hop on here and talk about this because, I've seen some talks in the community and it just seems like something that, we should talk about every now and then about what this game actually is, what type of game it is for the player, and consider what it will look like in the long term when we get to things like 1.0. Now, I know not everyone is going to agree with me, and that's totally okay. And I would really love to hear all opinions in the comments down below. If you agree with me, if you disagree with me, if you think I'm just kind of crazy to talk about this, I guess. Whatever it is, I would love to hear it because I enjoy the conversation. I enjoy hearing how you feel about these certain subjects. Besides that, though, that's really all I have for you today. If you'd like to hop into the community Discord, I've been, really enjoying talking to a couple of you fellas, and it's been a lot of fun. I'll try and live stream a little bit soon. I know the live stream setup is not great yet. We still have a ways to go before we can actually get that going and it being actually enjoyable experience for you guys. But besides that, I really appreciate you being here. I know this is a little bit of a random video, but it's one I wanted to put out, and we're gonna have some more stuff coming soon. The next video should be about some ship stuff, so I'm pretty excited for that. We'll get that going pretty soon here, but I really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video.